And welcome to another edition of A Look into Peekskill's History. As you might tell, the topic of today's show is the firematic department of Peekskill, the city of Peekskill. We have a unique situation this year in the city of Peekskill. We have two fire departments that are celebrating their anniversaries. The one we're in front of right now, Engine 131, or Columbian Engine number 1, which is celebrating their 175th anniversary. And there's the Centennial Hose on Washington Street, which is celebrating their 125th anniversary. We're going to start today with the Columbian Engine Company, and we're going to talk about the history. It's the oldest and first department in the city of Peekskill, or in that time was the village of Peekskill. And we're going to talk about some of the first members, how the company was formed, and some of the look at some of the old pictures and some of the old apparatus. They've just restored one of the was able to obtain one of their old apparatuses and restore it, which is a great thing. So we're going to look into a lot of things about the fire department in general, but more specifically today, the Columbian Engine number 1. Let's go inside and meet some of the members of the department and get into the history. Welcome everybody. We're inside the Columbian Engine's meeting room with Second Assistant Chief John Pappas. John, thanks for being with us today.
John.
Who happens to be, as he just told me, a 29-year member of this company, and recently elected as Second Assistant Chief for the City of Peekskill. Thanks again. And John, before we get into the actual history of the department, I'd like to just talk a little in general about the firemen and the fire department, so people out there who see these brave men and women going back and forth, responding to calls, putting their life on the line every day for them. A little bit about what they're seeing when they see these people go by, rushing by. I notice you have your Columbian Engine shirt on. I'm a member of Peekskill Fire Patrol, and people have these shields on their trucks. What do these numbers mean exactly?
The number 131 or 134, that's a county designation for the apparatus. Our hook and ladder is ladder 4-5, so that's county designation, ladder 4-5. Fire Patrol is designated as Engine 134. The chiefs are designated numbers through the county. We have we're given 2341 through 2349 for our chiefs. So it's all has to do with county designations.
I remember when I was younger, we had the chart on the wall in my house. Whenever there was a fire, you would hear a certain number of rings or horn to let you know about where the fire was. How is it done today?
We do it through radios. Most of the volunteers have it's a little radio they wear on their hip, and when county control pages us out, we have a certain tone that'll go off, which opens up the pager, and they tell us where the call is. And we're right now in the process of upgrading our radio system here in the city. We're waiting for a building to go up on top of the hill by the water towers there, and then we're going to have a state-of-the-art radio system where we've had some problems in the past getting our signal out, but with this new system we should have no problems at all.
Yeah, I know the city of Peekskill and the topography of it with the mountains and some of the buildings in the way. To have our own system like this and a modern system will be foolproof, hopefully, so all the fire people will get their signal, so we get a better response to the fires. Well, we're in your meeting room, and we see, as most firehouses have, probably all firehouses have, but the city of Peekskill for sure has a little museum of their own within their own firehouse. Every fire department has a rich history of its own. This being the oldest and first fire company in the village of Peekskill. John, I can see we have quite a bit of memorabilia around here, and What can you tell us a little bit about the room and a little bit about the fire department in general before we get into the history?
Like you said, most firehouses are going to have a lot of memorabilia from the past, and the volunteer service is built on tradition. And there's like our speaking trumpets that are up there in the case. Those things are well over 100 years old. The teapot that's next to it was something that was won in a tournament back in the 1800s. And just all the trophies in general and the pictures. There's tradition, there's stories that are passed down from member to member. Right. And, it's what makes the volunteers continue. If you didn't have that tradition, that dedication, then slowly they would dwindle away, and you'd end up having to foot the bill for a paid department.
Right. It does take a lot of dedication and commitment. You're called out of bed all times of the day and night. A lot of, like yourself, and my father was a member of the fire patrol, which is why I joined there. A lot of sons and daughters now are joining the different fire departments that their ancestors or father or grandfather was a member of. So it's a tradition within a family as well as within the city. We're going to be joined by a couple other members of the department in a minute, and we're going to get into the real history of this department. As I said before, it is the oldest, and it is the first, and they have a lot planned for the city of Peekskill this year. They're going to be really treating us with a lot of nice things we'll get into later on in the show. So thanks again, John. Let's go meet the other guys. Joined by Trustee Bill Conrad. Thanks for joining us, Bill.
Pleasure.
He's going to help us along with John to look at a little bit of the history of the department, show some of the nice pictures and some of the historical aspects of the department. But before I do that, I made a little trip to the Peekskill Field Library, which is always a good place to go, as you know, to get some history. And Bill, I know you spent a lot of time studying the history of the department. In Peekskill, the first act of legislature that in New York State that created the fire district here was in 1816, but it wasn't until 1826 that the department was actually formed, being the first one, which hence it's the 175th anniversary.
There was an enactment back in April 12th of 1826. So it's a little bit younger than our June 8th anniversary. And that enactment gave the city of Peekskill the ability to turn around and create a fire district.
Right.
And nothing was done with that for quite a number of years. And as time went on, going through the book here, you're going to find probably a year later they really started getting into doing the firematic end of it.
And we have here a list of some of the names, and I always like to mention names in this show, the historical aspect of Peekskill. There are a lot of streets named after some of these people, or at least relatives of these people. We have Birdsall, Shaw, Brown, another Birdsall, Halstead, Horton, Powell, Maybe.
That's correct.
So we have some historical names as well.
That's correct.
Let's look around and see some of the historical pictures you have. Bill, now the first firehouse that was formed for the company was where?
That was in Park Street.
And I know you have a photo of that here, so let's
Yes, we do.
go over there and take a look at it. Now, was that a department building within itself, or was it shared space?
That was the shared quarters with Columbian Hose. It's way before my time, but our chief here has a vivid recollection of some interior things that happened inside that firehouse, and I'd like him to share that, if he would.
Actually, in the beginning, it was shared by three companies. The middle bay was occupied by the Cortlandt Hook and Ladder until they bought their building over on Main Street. So you had Columbian Hose, Columbian Engine, and the Cortlandt Hook and Ladder were all in there at the same time. My father used to work there before it was torn down. He was a career member of the department. So I spent many days down there during the summers or going down after school. And I can remember that firehouse like it was yesterday. The downstairs on the two side bays, you had the two apparatus. Columbian Hose was on the left, Columbian Engine was on the right. And the middle bay, the bay was gone, and it was a room. They took the door out and they just put a regular walk-in door in. The floor was green tile. I remember the green tile. And on the left side there was a little kitchen for the career members to cook their meals, because they were there for dinner or lunch, whatever. The two apparatus bays, the apparatus was in the front, and in back of the apparatus there was always a desk for the officers to do their work. And behind that, on the Columbian Engine side especially, was a door leading out the back where one of the drivers used to have tomato plants.
Oh, okay.
And that led back to Big Scott. Anybody who's been in Peekskill a long time knows what Big Scott was, and that was a department
Which
store.
is now where the health center is.
Right, the health center.
Right.
And on the second floor, you got to the second floor, in the back of the middle bay there was a beautiful staircase that went upstairs, wooden railings going up. It was I guess it was a dark mahogany. And as you went up the stairs and you entered the meeting hall, Columbian Engine's meeting hall, you entered through the back and you looked out towards the front, and it was a really magnificent looking room. Me being a young kid, this was very impressive. And there was a beautiful slate pool table that was in the middle. They had these wooden desks up front. They had the bell was there that we still have, and there was a fireman that was there, and it was very impressive. It just looked like it was something that one of those living rooms that you never would sit in, but you just go in there and look at it.
Right.
It was very impressive. The room up above the apparatus was a long, skinny room, and they used to have a player piano in the front, and there were lined by chairs on the side, and there were these big, cushiony green chairs. The back of the room, there was a pole that the drivers would slide down if they're there at night and they got a call. Instead of going down the stairs, they just come out of their bedroom, jump down the pole, and go to the apparatus. And behind that room was where the drivers slept. There were two beds in there, and I remember they always had black and red checkered blankets on them. I guess they were issued by the city or something, but they always had those blankets. And it was a real nice firehouse. It had the third floor. One's Hose had a meeting hall on the left side, and then the upstairs was occupied by One's Hose also. The department's alerting system, the alarm, that big horn that anybody was here, that was located on there. So if you're standing outside that building when that alarm went off, you just got your socks knocked off. And up in the top left, you can see the bell. That was the bell that rang when they had the Fleischmann's fire. Before they got the horn, that bell would ring out the numbers, and that would tell people where the fires were. It was really an impressive building.
Well, that's a very vivid memory of a child who spent a lot of time there. It's obvious. Now, this picture is great because it looks like they had spared no expense on bunting for whatever the celebration was.
I believe that one there was for Columbian Hose's 100th anniversary, I think it was.
Now, I know there's a rich history as well of the apparatus that the company used. When did this firehouse become not used and you moved? I assume you moved from there to this present location on
That was part of urban renewal. We were going to tear down the firehouse and put up some great structure.
Put up a parking lot.
Yeah, well, we put up a parking lot. It was in the late 60s that they moved from there up to the station we're in right now.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about the various apparatus that the company used. I know the company, one of the main projects you had in recent years was finding one of the original apparatuses of the past and restoring. You can tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, we have an 1826 James Smith hand pumper, and it wasn't a question of finding it. I knew where it was.
Just get it.
And I followed it around the county for years, and we kept trying to get it back, and unfortunately for the man that had it, he passed away, and his wife didn't want it in the backyard anymore, and it was pretty deteriorated. So she called me up and said, I know you were looking for it. If you still want it, you got first dibs on it. So we bought it for $1,000.
Yeah, I remember being here for basically the unveiling of it, and it's a beautiful, beautiful piece of equipment. Tell us a little bit about, I know you found somebody to restore it in Pennsylvania, was that?
It was Mr. Petersheim, who's an Amish man, lives down in Paradise, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
And we had heard of him through an article in the paper that one of the Mount Kisco companies had their hose cart redone. So we called him up and asked him if he would do it, and went down there with some pictures and showed him some pictures of it. And of course, pictures lie. And he said, well, it doesn't look too bad. I can do it for you. But it was going to be the last thing he ever did.
Oh.
But when we brought it down there on the flatbed and he looked at it, I'm sure he didn't want to do it anymore.
You showed him pictures of the
Yeah, we showed
condition
him
of
the
it.
condition it was
okay.
in.
Oh,
That's,
okay.
well, the condition it was in when we had gotten it back.
Right.
And
As well as pictures, obviously, of what it was.
what
when
it was
new.
originally.
Right.
And the man is a master. He's a master. He did an unbelievable job on it, and it looks just like it did when it was, sitting in the firehouse.
And that was obviously a lot of work had to be done to use that because it was a hand operation.
Yeah,
So the
it took
firemen
about 12 guys, at least 12 guys to pump that thing.
And was that horse-drawn or
It was hand-drawn,
hand-drawn?
and then later on they had adapted it to horse-drawn.
So from that type of piece of equipment, what did the fire department graduate up to?
Well,
You
actually,
have some
before
photos here.
we had that,
Some photos over on the other side.
the original apparatus that the company had was just a pull cart, and it had pails in it.
Right.
And it was just a
Like
bucket
leather
brigade.
pails, maybe, yeah.
You went and you just threw water on the fire. From that, we went to a gooseneck, which is like a hand pumper, only it's a box with another box sitting on top of the nozzle that comes out of it. We don't have a picture of that
Okay.
here. I do have a wood model of one that was made at home of it.
Okay.
From that, we went to the piano box, and that was because you had cisterns in town, little wells, and they would drop the hose down there, and you'd pump the water. We had this one here, and then there was another one that we had. Around 1850s, approximately, the city started using water mains.
Okay.
And at that point, there was no longer a need for these hand pumpers to draw water out of the wells. So we went to a hose cart. And the picture's not here right now. That's being
Used for your
used for a journal.
Which we'll talk
And that was, the hose cart is just a little cart, 2 wheels, and in the middle, you just roll hose on it. And the guys would just pull it wherever the call was to take the hose, put the butt end on the hydrant, and to drag the rest of it to the fire, put a nozzle on it, turn the hydrant on, and they had their water. And they used that until 1909.
Okay.
And in 1909, what we got was a Webb triple combination pumper. And
Motorized.
first motorized fire apparatus in the state of New York.
Oh,
As a
and
matter of
Peekskill had
fact.
that. Okay,
Yep.
great.
And they raised the money for that by getting old newspapers and turning them in and
Oh.
just recycling. So we were recycling back in 1909 in Peekskill.
So this department, not only being the first department, was also the first department for New York State to have
a motorized piece of apparatus.
Interesting piece of history.
I would love to find out where that one went, but
Yeah.
I have no clue. After the 1909 Webb, we had a 1929 Seagrave.
Okay.
We don't have a picture of that one in here now either. That's probably being printed. And then after the 29 Seagrave, we had a 49 Seagrave. And after the 49 Seagrave, we had a 69 Seagrave. So, Seagrave was
right.
the truck of choice.
Right.
The last Seagrave, though, after we had bought it, the company sold to FWD, and it was still Seagrave, but it wasn't the same Seagrave fire apparatus.
Okay.
So in 1993, we got our present truck, which is a Pierce apparatus, a 1,200 gallon pumper, 500 gallon tank, and that's what we operate now.
Well, I mean, that's a very detailed history, John, of the apparatus that was used in the city. And as well, we know that not only has the city population grown over the years, which has also necessitated the city expanding the fire department, it's also shown that each fire department has grown. I know this fire department, Bill, used to be maybe 20 or 30 members. What are you up to now?
Well, between associate and active, we're probably 123 members.
I know you're very active, and I know you have a lot of younger members joining.
Well, we're very proud of that. We had to go on a recruitment thing, and most companies, you need the youth if you want to continue to grow. And we decided as a membership here, we had to turn around and offer something for the young fellas to get them to enjoy what I get a lot of pleasure out of, fighting fires and being with people that talk and do the same thing. So we turned around and we lowered some of the rules and regulations that we had here in order to accommodate these young fellas. And we openly went up to the high school. We openly put the word out through our members that all young fellas are welcome. And it's really, really worked out well. They come here sometimes in the afternoon. We have a full weight room. We have darts. We have pool table. We have a very active muster team, which they're welcome to join. And that's a fun time.
That's a competition type.
That's
thing,
a competition time, and it's very, very good. It gives them the firematic things with fun. Where it's regulated, where getting hurt, it's not a situation where you can lose your life.
So the youngsters can also come and just have a place to be. I mean, just have a place to gather and talk with their friends, learn from the older members, and get a little bit of history and a little bit of tradition that maybe they might not get otherwise.
There's a little bit more than that, too, because if the kid does have a problem, or he needs some guidance, or he needs something, there's somebody here that's willing to turn around and maybe put him in the right direction, or set him straight, whatever that might be. And it's worked out very well for us.
I know a lot of my students are members here, and over the years, probably now most of this department, at least in the mid-20s and younger, were students of mine or came from Peekskill, so that's very important. I know the firehouse has changed. As you said, you have a weight room, you have a nice kitchen, and you have a nice meeting room which has the pool table. So fire departments have kind of changed over the years.
Oh, definitely so, definitely so. And again, our history, being that we're going to be 175 years old, is something to be very proud of. And I think the fellas, I know all the members here, I feel something special to belong to something that old. For people that have passed on, have given their lives for the city of Peekskill. And part of this 175th celebration will be to give something back a little bit to the city of Peekskill.
And that's what I want to talk about now. The fire department, and this fire department in particular, has always given of themselves for the city in terms of safety, in terms of protecting the citizens. But they're also going to give back in a lot of other ways this year, and Bill's going to point out some of those. I know they have a lot planned. 175 years is a long time to be in existence. It's the first company in Peekskill. So, Bill, what are some of the festivities you have planned for us?
One of the main things that we're going to do is a fireworks display. That is going to be on our anniversary, which is June 8th.
Okay. June 8th at the Riverfront
At the Riverfront Green. Zambelli's is going to do the presentation.
Okay.
The time yet will be announced. There will be plenty of opportunity for people to come down, and hopefully that they enjoy that and we're able to share with the city our 175th tradition.
Great.
And then the following day, we plan on a parade through the Peekskill area. We plan on pulling the hand pumper. Is that correct, John?
Yeah, we're going to pull it.
Okay, so we're going to, we did this when we first got it the last 4th of July. So we're going to do this on the 175th, and I think that's very fitting.
I think so,
It's a
too.
beautiful apparatus. It's a beautiful piece of workmanship. It's unbelievable what this man did to that.
It's actually celebrating its 175th
Yeah,
birthday
exactly.
this year also. So it's,
We're going to be showing some video of the unveiling of that so people can see what we're talking about. But if you're around that day, you definitely have to get up close and look at this workmanship. As Bill and John have said, that a lot has gone into it, and it's really something to look at. And it's something that was originally here in Peekskill 175 years ago, pulled through the city streets, and the present fire department is going to be, the company here is going to be pulling it through the streets again. And we're really looking forward to it.
Keep in mind, too, the restoration, which is very special to us, was made through our own efforts.
Right.
We received no funds from anybody. We raised it through our own donations,
Right.
through hard work,
Right.
and whatever it takes. So it's been a labor of love. I think there's a lot of guys here that feel very, very close to that, and because we've all worked hard.
Yes.
I know the crew that went down to pick it up. I know Mr. Petershine, who put a lot of work into it. John, who kept track of it all these years. That's our
It's
showpiece.
the kind of thing that brings people together. You know, you have a mutual thing to do, and I think it's a very good showing for the city and a
Absolutely.
good showing for your department. Well, thank you guys again.
Okay.
And we're going to walk around, look at some of the other awards and pictures here. And again, thanks for everything that you guys have done for the city of Peekskill.
Thank you, sir.
As I said earlier, we were lucky in Peekskill this year. We have 2 companies that are celebrating anniversaries. We just left Columbian Engine with their 175th, and now here we are here at Centennial Hose number 4 on Washington Street, who are celebrating their 125th this year. So we're going to go inside and we're going to talk to John Esposito, a former chief in the city of Peekskill, now a deputy chief, and he's going to bring us through the house here. We're going to talk about some of the memorabilia they have, a little bit about the history of this company. And unfortunately, this company was present at one of the major tragedies that happened in Peekskill, and we'll talk about that when we get inside. So let's go in and meet John. Hi, John.
Hi, John.
Thanks for having us down.
Welcome to Centennials.
Well, I think the best place to start is right here in front of the trophy case. This is former Chief John Esposito, now Deputy Chief in the city of Peekskill, and we want to thank him again for letting us down here to look through their great collection here of memorabilia, as well as obviously here all their awards. Can you point anything of note out, John?
Yes, one significant trophy that we have here is this large one in the center of the case. It's the best overall unit in the Hudson Valley Volunteer Firemen's Parade in 1975.
That's a beautiful trophy, and it looks like you guys have done a lot of good work over the years and have been noticed for it, as this display shows. And I noticed over here, I've been down here obviously a number of times, and I know just about every firehouse has a collection of some sort of all their history, but this seems to be a little bit more than most, especially when it comes to all the drills or maybe the conventions or whatever other kind of events that might be related to these ribbons and pins.
Yeah, that's right, John. A lot of these pins date back into the 1800s. They were when there were parades, and they were tokens of appreciation that were handed out, and some of these are from actual conventions as of late.
Well, it's a great collection, and I'm glad that you have this to display, because it's one of the things I look at every time I come down here. It's really a nice retrospective of everything that's happened in this company, at least, and in the city of Peekskill. Now, John, Centennial Hose obviously got their name from a certain time in history. I want you to give us a little bit of the background of Centennial Hose and when it was formed.
All right. In December of 1875, there were some businessmen in the south end of the city that decided that they needed fire protection, so they were going to form another fire company. Centennial Hose was actually formed in April of 1876. It was originally going to be called Southard Hose after William Southard, a local stove manufacturer. He in turn didn't want his name associated with it, so at the turn of the century, this is how they came to become Centennial Hose.
Well, it's a great story, and obviously this is not the original building that you housed or that the company was in. Obviously, it was an older building, and it's still standing. Luckily for the city of Peekskill, we still have the opportunity to save it, and we'll be talking about that more later. But that was done on Water Street, and give us a little bit of history about that if you can.
Well, Centennials, since they've been in existence, were down on Water Street until October of 1980 when this facility was opened up to us.
So obviously the need was for a larger facility, a more modern...
More modern quarters,
right.
correct.
But luckily, like I said, we still have that building, and we'll discuss that. And I noticed you have quite a number of old photographs here, some of them of the firehouse and of people who obviously were members. So let's go look at some of those and talk a little bit about the history.
Okay.
Okay, John, I don't know if this is one of the oldest photos we have, but I know it's old enough, 1905, and it's outside the old firehouse down there on Water Street.
That's right.
With one of the old apparatuses and a lot of...
horse-drawn apparatus.
Right. And you can see, and we'll point out in a lot of these pictures that we'll be looking at, you'll be able to see some of the buildings that are probably no longer there or may be no longer there, so we can get a little flavor of what it looked like at the time. This is at the turn of the century, 1905. And it's also fun to look at the clothes that were worn, not only by the civilian clothes, but also the fireman gear that was worn back then.
Yeah, they had some real good uniforms back in those days.
And then on the other photo here, we see what looks like to be some kind of a celebration. You can see, I don't know what year this is, but it's probably similar in age to the last one. And what can you tell us about this, John?
That picture is down on Hudson Avenue and South Street in the vicinity of Water Street. And it was a sign that was placed across the street to welcome visiting firemen from other cities.
And I see they have one of their parade apparatuses there.
In the middle of the street, there's a parade carriage that was used back in those times.
So this picture was probably taken close to where the Standard House is now, or Carbone's. We just did a show on that last time. So if we were standing right outside of Carbone's or right around that vicinity, maybe near the tracks, this picture was taken from there.
That's right.
Okay, let's go look at some of the chiefs that came out of this company. Well, John, here we see you have a nice collection of photos of chiefs that have come out of this company, and let's start with the first one.
The first picture is of Dudley C. Hasbrook. He was the first chief from Centennial Hose. The next picture is Chief James McGuire. Then we have Chief Lewis Cole, Chief Edward Crawford, Chief Lewis Haight, and
Who's that guy on the end?
John Esposito.
Well, this is a very, very nice aspect of the firehouse as well. You guys always keep a display of the chiefs, because that's a very proud thing for every company to have a chief come out of their company. And we see two other photos below, and this is something I mentioned in outside before we came in, that this company was a part of, if not the biggest, one of the biggest tragedies that happened in fire-related terms in Peekskill.
That's correct. August 1st, 1918, 7 Peekskill firefighters lost their lives, 5 from Cortlandt Hook and Ladder and 2 from Centennial Hose, those 2 being Walter Cole and John Torpy. Now, Walter Cole was just 18 years old at the time, and he just became a member of Centennial Hose.
I know it was a very sad tragedy, and it's something that we memorialize every year. We don't want to forget such brave people, and it's important for the firemen to see how dangerous, and for the people to see how dangerous the firemen put themselves in every day, the conditions. And we have to remember that this is the real deal. This is, going in after fire and trying to rescue people, and we want to make sure that everybody remembers that people do lose their lives, and this was a very big tragedy for Peekskill.
That's correct, and we hope we never see another incident like that again.
We have a lot of training, and we do a lot of things to prevent these type of things, but you never know when a tragedy will strike. But this is something that has been a historic event for Peekskill, and we make sure we keep that alive in everybody's minds. Let's go on to see some of the other older pictures you have of the building and some of the members. Now, this is a good collection, John, of some larger photos of members and of the company, also with the older building in the background, and we can get some really good detail of the building itself, something I really like to look at. And I notice the original building had some stained glass on both sides, and one of them on the door, one of them has a window, obviously, and we can see some of the surroundings and how it looked down there at the time.
Yes, that's prior to the bridge going in,
right,
and several of the other structures that were completed after this.
And obviously, these are connected with some kind of a celebration or another. The bunting is used quite extensively, especially at that time. Bunting was always used for celebrations of one sort or another. And again, this area of the city was really in need of a firehouse, because at that time it was an industrialized area. There was a lot of industry down there. And I'm sure the feeling was that there was a need for a fire department down there.
That's correct.
Let's move on to some of the anniversaries I see here. Just looking as the 75th anniversary. John, what can you tell us about that? You probably were a part of that, no?
No, that was back in the 50s. That was before my time.
Okay.
I didn't get into the department until around 1964.
Oh, okay.
But some of these gentlemen here in this picture are still with us, and some of them I knew quite well.
And you can see a little bit of the evolution of the building. You can see how the stained glass now is gone, and you can see how some of the surroundings are different. And also we can see the apparatus. Now we're going to get into some more modern-looking type apparatuses once we get into the later years. But the picture above it, John, seems very interesting to me. Looks like there's another company involved with yours.
Yes, that was a parade somewhere around 1920-something. It was Centennials had invited Reliance Hose from Port Chester, New York, to come up and march with them in a parade. And you'll see a flag there that depicts Centennial Hose Company. That is the original banner of Centennial Hose, which now resides in the Fireman's Home in Hudson, New York.
Oh, that's great. It's great that you were able to save that, and it's important to point out that there is a fireman's home in the state of New York for a fireman. And why don't you explain a little bit about that, since you touched on it?
Well, anyone that served in the volunteer service or the paid service is entitled to go to the fireman's home. It's theoretically a nursing home, but it's really a home away from home. They really take good care of all the people up there.
That's good to know, and I know we've had some people from Peekskill who have taken advantage of that. Any from this department?
Yes, we have several guys up there right now. One from Centennial Hose, Frankie Lepore. We have Eddie Clark from Columbian Engine, who I understand is going to be the Grand Marshal in the parade on June 9th.
Oh, great.
We've had some deceased members, Charles DeLavalier from Centennials. There's a gentleman from Columbian Hose up there, Cy Turner. And that's about all I can think of right now.
Well, it's great to know that for the firemen and their families that there are facilities for our brave firemen when they get to the age where they need it.
Right.
Now, the first fire that the Centennial Hose fought was kind of a strange thing in itself.
The first fire that the company responded to was on Main Street, where the YWCA is. It used to belong to a doctor. He had a carriage house in the back. That caught fire, and Centennials was called to the scene, and they pulled the hose cart up Central Avenue to Main Street.
And that must have been some job, because in those days, I guess the way they call run with the machine or run with the apparatus. There was no horses involved, all manpower.
That's correct. I'd get tired out just walking up that hill.
But they were very much dedicated to the cause. And for those of you who might not know what we're talking about, it's the building next to Pugsley Park downtown.
correct.
So there was a carriage house there, obviously at the time, with horses. So it was an important fire, obviously, to fight in the center of town. But they came all the way from Water Street down to Main Street to do that. Let's look at a few others, John, and see as we move up to more modern times, and we can see that the one photo here, and the larger photo is, and I see it says elect Lou Haight.
Lou Haight. Lou Haight now resides in Swannanoa, North Carolina. He was running for chief at the time, and we Centennial supported him.
Now, this photo also has a little bit more of a view of what's around the building. It's very close to what it would look like today if we went down there, except for, I think, the building in the back and the building to the side are a little older, obviously. I think the doorway was widened at one time.
Yes, it was. And also, now you can see the bridge in
Right,
there.
you can see the bridge there. John, let's go down and look at some of the celebration from 25 years ago. And John, the last time that this company had the chance to celebrate in such a manner was 25 years ago, and these photos depict that time. It's probably close. 76 was the last, the 75th anniversary, the last celebration you had. Very close to the end of being in the old building, and you can see here a gathering outside the old building.
Yes. We have pictures of all the officers at the time, and up in the upper left we have a picture of the entire company, and to the right we have all the officers together in one picture.
And obviously I can see in the background the Spirit of 76 on the door, the red, white, and blue was that time in the country to buy Centennial, so that was also a big event for the country, not only the city. And I noticed something different in these photos. I see yellow fire trucks. What can you tell me about that?
Well, this was a 1975 Mack apparatus, and when this was spec'd out, it was the company's wishes that it came in this lime yellow, and it did, and it looked very well. In 1981, it went out to be refurbished, and it came back fire engine red.
Okay, and that's been that way ever since.
That's
right?
correct.
Now let's look at some of the I guess these are the officers of that period, or some of the celebration committee members, or whatever.
Yeah, the first picture has the captain and the president. Captain at the time was Norm Haight, and I just happened to be the president. The second picture has our fire trustees, Charles de Lavalier on the left and Frankie Mancuso on the right. The center picture has our three firematic officers, which would have been Norm Haight in the center, Kenny Benedict to the left, and Dennis Strasser to the right. The next picture over has our committee chairman, George Strumke and Mike Calabrese, who incidentally were two career firefighters in the city of Peekskill who have since retired.
Right.
And the last picture is of the captain alone, Norm Haight.
Well, just seeing these people here, I know some of them, as you said, some of them are still around town, and some might have moved away, but these are people who have been dedicated to the city of Peekskill for many, many years, like yourself. And I just want to thank you for letting us come down here today. You have a rich history in Centennial, and we wish you all the luck this year with your celebration. We're going to help you celebrate.
Good.
And you're going to be doing it in conjunction with another firehouse company, as we talked about earlier in the show. And so it's going to be a big celebration this year in the city of Peekskill for the firemen and for all of us, and we're looking forward to it. We're going to go down and visit the old building, John, but before we go, I just want to thank you once again,
Thanks for coming.
and have a good summer.
Thank you very much. Street now, across from the old Centennial Firehouse, and you can see we're right here where Central Avenue and Water Street come together.
And we're also right across from another important building here on the waterfront, the Lincoln train station, which is another project that I'm involved with the city, which we'll be talking about sometime in the future. And you can see with this firehouse, it's still standing, still has most of its features, and if you look closely, you can see how it changed slightly from the older pictures we just saw up at the Centennial House on Washington Street. You can see how the stained glass windows are gone. The one side left looking at the building, that window had to be closed in so they could widen the door. Obviously, as time went on, the apparatuses got bigger and they had to make room for that. And the building itself is basically in its original condition, except for those few changes, something that we really should be looking at, and I'm looking at, to preserve this building. And hopefully we can find a way, and I'm working very hard to do that, to find a way to have this building preserved for the city of Peekskill to use, maybe as a fireman's museum or some other type of a facility. As you might see above, there's the overpass, Route 9 overpass, which will be reconstructed within the next 3 to 5 or 6 years. And due to the fact of this reconstruction, the rebuilding of this bridge, this firehouse will have to be hopefully not demolished. That's the goal, to preserve it, but definitely moved. And I've been speaking with various people on that regard, and hopefully in the near future I'll be able to talk to you about that. It's an important building, but it's also important to me because my grandfather was a member of this firehouse. He died in 1918. So knowing that he was part of this fire company also is important to me. He lived on South Street, right up the street here, actually. So he wasn't far from here. So obviously he had his opportunities to come down to the firehouse when he was younger. But the building is in a tough spot, which is why in 1980 the Centennial Company moved up to Washington Street. For those of you who lived in this town for any number of years, you know that this area gets flooded quite heavily. It's been a lot better in recent years with a lot of the work that's been done with McGurkery's Brook, which runs right under Central Avenue, right across from the firehouse. So the flooding in this area really caused problems, not only for this firehouse, but for the businesses down here. That has pretty much been subsided, but the firehouse is no longer needed in this area. The industry that was here in past years, turn of the century, this is all industry, all various types of foundries and other types of industry that really needed to have a fire company close by. So as you can tell, there's a lot to be done, but we're going to do it, and this firehouse is going to be a part of Peekskill's future. This building also has some nice features on the inside. Has one of those poles that you come down, that the firemen come down on a call, but also it has a nice big banquet hall upstairs that was used quite frequently. Every year they had a St. Patrick's Day celebration, and it was something that some of the older members have told me about in past years, and they reminisce about some of the times they had up there. Hopefully, as time goes on, we'll be able to make a little complex in this area of historic structures, and this will be one of the main structures that will hopefully house not only firematic but Peekskill history. Well, I want to thank you once again for joining me in another edition of A Look into Peekskill's History, and look forward to having you next month when we do another show. But before we go, there's something else I'd like to point out about Peekskill and New York State in terms of firematic history and firematic remembrance of those who have lost their lives in fighting fires. Governor Pataki in 1998 dedicated a very important memorial up in Empire State Plaza in Albany, and it's dedicated to all the firefighters in the state of New York who have given their lives in the line of duty. And it's an important memorial because not only was it done by a former business in Peekskill, Italics company, a foundry, but it's also a place where you can go and just remember the danger and remember those who gave their lives saving our lives and saving our property and giving us peace of mind. And if you go up there and look at this memorial, you'll see names of all firefighters who have lost their lives in the line of duty in the state of New York. And amongst those, you'll see the 7 members of Peekskill who gave their lives in fighting the Fleischmann's fire back in 1918. So if you're interested in firematic history, you're interested in looking at various sites as you move throughout the state, take time to stop in the Empire State Plaza up in Albany if you're ever up that way, and look at the fire memorial up there. It's an important memorial, and it's one that we all appreciate the governor doing a few years ago. So again, thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.